The power-armored figure clomped steadily through the halls of the arena, cutting through the milling drunk of the highborn and their personal guard. The figure seemed twitchy, a hand hovering near the laser pistol on their side. The armor's articulated tail dragged limply, like the operator had been born tailless. And in truth, they had. A cold fire burned in Drake's chest as he marched through the crowded halls. Each step shot pain shooting through his body from various infected wounds. But Drake wasn't done yet. So long as he could draw breath, he'd make sure the promises made to his people were kept. The Geknosian power armor fit poorly, clearly designed for non-human anatomy. Drake made to take another step, but didn't fully lift his foot up before leaning forward. He came crashing down face first. The intoxicated nobles and oligarchs laughed, and the boy felt his rage flare. But he couldn't afford to be rash. They'd all get what was coming to them eventually. Drake slowly clambered to his feet, continuing to march towards the fighter pits. They hadn't blindfolded him when they brought him in, a mistake on their part. Drake's shattered thoughts continued to wander as exhaustion and pain drew him into autopilot. He remembered the little Clawville girl that lived next door, the little loaves of bread she baked. "You'll come back to us, right?" Drake had to stop for a moment as the memory punched him in the gut. He'd offered himself up for the pits in her father's stead. Normally, Drake would have been too young for the fighting pits, not even being 18 solar cycles old. But he was also an orphan, his parents having died trying to defend their home city. Drake felt it was his duty to volunteer for the arena, and now his duty had changed. The hallways became wider and less crowded as Drake made his way deeper into the arena's bowels, until he reached a large, intricately carved wooden door flanked by 2 guards. He looked up at the design on the door and felt his blood boil. A depiction of the monarch stood triumphantly upon a mountain of human and Clawville corpses, flag planted in a skull far too small to be an adult. Drake took a labored step forward, heart beating in his ears as his thoughts turned to violence. "Remember this, parasites. If you somehow defeat the warrior you're faced with, you'll have earned your and your village's freedom, as decreed by our glorious monarch, Divin." "Liars," Drake growled as he took a heavy step towards the guards, catching their attention. "Deceivers!" He barked, making one guard flinch and unsling their Gauss rifle. The other guard cautiously approached Drake, thinking it was one of his comrades after too much liquor. Drake locked onto the lizard, who pulled the helmet off and began to speak. "Are you all right, Private? Do you need to lay down?" When the lizard was within arm's reach, Drake's hand shot out with no warning and grabbed the lizard by the throat with his powered gauntlet. It was Drake's turn to speak as the lizard's purplish face began to darken as he choked and clawed at the fingers digging into his throat. "I'm gonna kill you all!" Drake twisted his wrist and the Geknosian's neck snapped, their body going limp as their eyes swiveled wildly for a moment. Drake tossed the dying Geknosian to the side and sprinted at the other one who'd moved to block the doorway. Drake screamed, a primal, unhinged, inhuman sound as a Gauss slug pinged off his helmet. He didn't stop his charge when he felt his shoulder slam into the Geknosian. He didn't stop as he felt the Geknosian get pinned to the door, the wood creaking. He didn't stop, even as he felt the Geknosian's armor buckling under the force. He only stopped when he burst through the wooden doors. Splinters and timbers mixed with purple blood and broken armor exploded into the slaves' barracks, and 100 hopeless eyes turned to the figure in blood-stained armor that now stood in the broken doorway. Drake's blood boiled as he saw the hundreds of hopeless eyes that stared at him from cages and shackled to the walls. The cages were packed haphazardly and with no sense of organization. The strong and able were caged with the sick and weak. Almost every cage had a corpse in it, wooden signs with Geknosian script nailed to their rotting flesh. The only good parasite. Drake felt something break inside of him, and he slowly reached up, removing his power armor's helmet, as his fury went from a white-hot furnace to a tiny pinprick. But that little pinprick of heat threatened to consume him, as he mindlessly marched up to the closest cage and ripped the door off with his power armor's inhuman strength. He spoke in a voice no louder than a whisper, but it was a whisper that brought life to dead eyes. "They're going to pay for this. They're all going to pay for this." Drake looked at the shattered door, then at the racks of medieval weaponry on the far wall. "And their suffering will be tenfold what they inflicted on us."